Tanse, I'm TR Wheatley, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is the Honorable Justice Michelle Obansawin.
Ndeliwizi Miselis Obansawin.
She is Abanaki from the Odanak First Nation and is the first Indigenous person to sit on the Supreme Court of Canada. Before her appointment in 2022, she was a judge in Ontario, Nunavut, and the Yukon. Amongst her education, Obansawin has a Master of Law from Osgoode Hall Law School and a doctorate in law from the University of Ottawa. She's also taught Indigenous law and has written many publications on mental health, as well as Gladu reports and principles. Justice Obansawin, thanks so much for joining us, and congratulations, first one of us at the High Court, which we'll get to in a bit. But first, it's been 2 years and a quarter since you were sworn in. Let's start with some reflection on what type of cases you've seen and the amount of work that goes into presiding over them.
I've been really fortunate because there have been a variety of interesting cases since I've arrived. As many are aware, we've had really big Indigenous law cases with C-92, child protection, with Ristoul. We've had really interesting criminal law cases, some civil cases out of Quebec. So it's been an amazing 2+ years. The amount of work is, it's big. It's continual. It's a lot of reading, a lot of writing.
Yeah, so before we get more into your career, we recently heard the Prime Minister say he will step aside in March once a new Liberal leader is chosen. While it isn't just the PM who decides who sits on the Supreme Court, your opportunity did come under him. What's your reflection of his time as PM over the past 9 years?
Well, I could talk with regards to my career. I'm very fortunate. I was named to the Superior Court in 2017 by Minister Wilson Raybould, the first Indigenous minister. And then afterwards, it's the Prime Minister Trudeau that named me to this position. So I'm very thankful for him to have named me to this court.
And, previous to the High Court gig, you were appointed to the Ontario Superior Court in 2017, as you just said. First of us in the door there again. While that is more known, some of us may not know you also worked Nunavut and Yukon courts. What did you do up there, and what did that experience teach you?
Well, I had been named a deputy judge of the court, and I have to say I didn't get to sit in the courts actually, because what happened was I had a specific murder trial that was supposed to go ahead. We had worked to prep it, and at the last minute there was a scheduling error. So before I got to continue my great work on that court, which was going to be interesting because it involved traveling up north, I got named to this court. So there was a change in plans when it came to being a deputy judge in those two regions.
All right, so you have a lot of experience in your legal career, Indigenous issues obviously, human rights, labor law to name a few. You also seemed to take a liking to mental health as well as Gladu principles within the judicial system. What inspired you to take on cases that have these aspects?
Before I was named to the Superior Court, I was general counsel at a mental health institution called the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre. And that institution had 2 big forensic mental health units. So those are mental health units that deal with individuals who are found not criminally responsible on account of mental disorder or unfit to stand trial. And it's a parallel system, that I call it, to the criminal law justice system. So instead of being found guilty, not guilty, they'll be found either NCR unfit. They'll go to an institution like the Royal, and it's also a teaching hospital. So it allowed me to delve myself in mental health issues, more specifically in forensic mental health. And through that work, I became involved on research with regard to Gladu principles, because those are sentencing principles that we refer to when we're sentencing Indigenous accused. There's an obligation under the criminal code to look at the particular background of the accused that comes in front of us, with regard especially for Indigenous accused. So it allowed me to do a lot of research about how that could impact those Indigenous people that come in the forensic mental health system.
Like you've just said, you've done a lot of work on that. You've written extensively about those Gladu principles. What do you make of the inconsistent way that Gladu is used across the country, with some jurisdictions using Gladu reports and others that don't?
It's really hard because what happens is there's no general certification across Canada for Gladu writers. So at times you'll have those that are writing cookie cutter reports, you'll have those that have had more training, have gone into the communities, met with community workers, elders, family members to really get that individualized information with regard to the Indigenous accused. So because there's no uniformity, it's really difficult. The consistency of the report writing, it varies in regions. For Ontario, for example, in Toronto, there's Aboriginal Legal Services. They do the majority of all the reports here, so there's consistency on that front. And unfortunately, some courts are not really referring to 718(2)E of the Criminal Code, which is that mandatory provision for sentencing Indigenous accused and looking at the Gladu principles.
What is your top issue you want to address, or how you hope to leave an impact within your current role?
There's not anything in particular I want to address. I'm just hoping to move the law forward. I think it's really important that we evolve with society. I think we have to keep our pulse on what's going on in the world, within Canada and external. And I think just to be mindful of the evolution of society, the evolution of case law, and how my role could have maybe a small, because I am one of 9, so if I could help move the law forward, for me that would be something that would really make me happy.
So now, as the first Indigenous person in your seat, what's that responsibility feel like, and how do you manage expectations, your own, your peers, and those within our community?
I found in the first year was more difficult because I felt the weight of it on my shoulders. As time moved forward, I find it's easier. I could just do the best that I can, always give 100%, trying to be mindful of my role in the court, how I interact with my colleagues, how we work together on files. So for me, the goal is to be the best judge that I could be, and to hopefully contribute to Canada by writing good, solid decisions.
What's that like working with your colleagues? I mean, you all have different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's something really unique. I always say I'm in a prearranged marriage with 8 other people that I haven't chosen. So it's been a good experience. We all have different lived backgrounds. We all have different personalities. We're fortunate we get along, because sometimes that may not always be the case when you look at a big composition of a court. But, there's give and take, and sometimes, like every family, we don't always see eye to eye, but generally I think that it's a well-meshed group of 9 judges.
Speaking of family and speaking of community, you're a member of the Abanaki First Nation, but you also grew up in a small town near Sudbury in Northern Ontario. Tell us about your upbringing and how it's shaped your law career.
So I grew up in this really small French town just east of Sudbury, called Hanmer. I'm an only child of a working class family. My father was an employee of an international nickel company. My mother was a teacher, so there were no lawyers in my family. So I have to say it was quite the surprise when I told them at 9 years old I was going to become a lawyer. But we're a very close-knit family. My father, the Obanswins, they're a family of 8 children, so I'm still very close to my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. As an only child, I was really fortunate. My cousin Andre is really my brother, who spent a lot of time with us as a teenager. So although I'm an only child, I consider that I do have a brother, and we're a very close-knit family. And so much so, I moved to Ottawa to come to law school. And my parents, when they retired, actually moved from the Sudbury area to come here. So I'm lucky. I have my parents that are here, and my grandmother, who was able to move here before she passed away and actually saw me named to this court. So that was really special.
We'll get a little bit more into your family, but it's time to take a short break. But stay where you are. You don't want to miss more of our conversation with the first Indigenous person who's gone straight to the top in Canada's legal system. We'll be right back.
So we'll go through the back door where we go in, actually. So we're just going to go down a flight of steps.
So normally you'd see the other side, so it's nice, you get to see the other side of the door.
It's the Prime Minister Trudeau that named me to this position, so I'm very thankful for him to have named me to this court.
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is the Lady in Red, coming to you from Ottawa. Before the break, Justice O'Bonsawin, we were talking about your professional career and a brief convo about you being an Abanaki woman. Tell us a bit more about your family and home life, those who you enjoy spending time with outside of work, and what y'all do together.
So I met my husband in law school, so he's a lawyer. And I have two sons. The oldest is 20, the youngest is 18. I'm fortunate because we're quite an artistic family. My father is an artist, I'm an artist, and my oldest is actually a blown glass artist. My youngest is in university. So, and we have 4 dogs. So in addition to the kids, we have really 4 dogs, which are members of our family. So it's really busy at our house on the weekends. A lot of activities, going out, doing things with the kids, the young men and the dogs, but we're a busy family.
You know, growing up Abanaki, you've had your fair share of discrimination and racism. Share with us a moment that made an impact on you, how you handled it, and what you learned.
There was one moment that really stands out. I had just been named to the Superior Court in 2017, the day before then President Trump had made a comment with regard to a senator who he had referred to as Pocahontas. And the next day when I was sitting in court, I had a series of different lawyers appearing in front of me on motions. At one point in the crowd that are sitting there waiting to be heard, I hear one lawyer say to another, "Oh yes, she's Native Indian, she's our Pocahontas of the North." And she said it loud enough for me, sitting over 20 feet away, to be able to hear what she had said. So I waited, I signed the order. When it came time to those 2 lawyers to come and appear in front of me, I actually said, "For the record, I've just been referred to as Pocahontas of the North and it's not appropriate." And then once that was done, I had asked for the members of that firm to have a meeting, for them to have a discussion of why it was not appropriate. So a senior member of our court contacted that firm, and then afterwards I actually called the law firm, the managing partner, to share a couple of things with him, because I did receive a letter of apology, which was not a letter of apology. It basically said, "I apologize for your perception of what I said in a private comment to a colleague, which was highly inappropriate." So I said, one, I didn't accept the letter of apology. I also said that I did appreciate that the junior member came and apologized in person, because that took a lot of guts, and I wanted to recognize that. And the third thing is I advised him that this lawyer was going to be on my conflict list and could not appear in front of me again, because I thought it was really important. And at the day in question, when I got home, I took the time to talk to my kids about this, who were much younger, because I wanted them to realize that it doesn't matter what level you are in society, discrimination, it could happen to anybody. And no one's shielded from that situation. And what's important is how you respond to it. You have to say something and speak up, because just having remained silent, it just perpetuates the problem.
Thanks for sharing that with us. You know, moving on here, you wrote in your questionnaire that you wanted to be a lawyer since you were 7. You know, at that young age, what was your concept of what that looked like?
It's really funny, because people always say, "You were that young, there weren't lawyers in your family, why did you pick that?" I don't know, it must have been something that was on TV. For me, a lawyer went to court, fought for the little person, and was successful. So those are things that I guess for me at that age I thought was attractive.
You know, let's talk a bit about early in your career. You worked for the feds in what was called Indian Affairs at the time, and also the RCMP. 2 departments that aren't favorable in the Indigenous community because of past history, you know, with both of them. So why was it so important to get that type of experience for you?
Well, when I was in law school, there was an opening to work in the minister's office, and it was during the time of the creation of Nunavut. They were working on also the creation of National Aboriginal Day, and for me those were two things that were important, and I thought it would be a good opportunity as a young student to be part of that process. So that's why I started at Diane for that first summer while I was in law school. And then afterwards at the RCMP Legal Services, when I was in university in my second year of law, I was looking for a position. There weren't too many positions at the time, and working at Justice was one that was available, and it was a position I applied for. So I worked there as a researcher, as a law student, and then afterwards I started off my career as a lawyer for a period of about 6 months. But I wanted to litigate, and that's the reason that I ended up by leaving Justice.
You know, changing from law for a minute here, but still on your career, you know, you were a tour guide and a cook in Ontario's north. Any memories stand out for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I worked at my aunt's chip stand, and there was one funny moment where my two aunts were working, and one of my aunts went up to get one of the buckets of oil, and it fell all over her. So that was quite the laugh, and I have to tell you, my mother used to make me change in the garage outside of my work clothes because I smelled so much like grease when I got home. So there were a lot of funny moments working at that chip stand with my aunts. And working as a tour guide at Big Nickel Mine, that was something that was a lot of fun because we had all kinds of people throughout Canada that visited, but also on the international sphere. And at that time, I was quite fluent in Spanish, so it was fun because at times I was able to give tours in French and English, but also in Spanish.
Now I gotta press a little bit. Why are you fluent in Spanish?
Well, my mom taught Spanish in high school, and she also taught courses in college. So because she had an interest in that, it flowed down to me, and I thought it was interesting, and it's always good to learn another language.
Speaking of languages, when you were sworn in, you spoke some of your own language as well.
I was really fortunate because the silver lining for me in the pandemic was it gave me an opportunity to learn about my Abanaki language. So we started off 3 days a week in January of 2020. I did intensive classes because the goal was for us to be fluent enough to attend Middlebury College, which is a language college in the States. They were doing a pilot program to teach it the Abanaki language. So we did really intensive courses, and then afterwards I was able to continue my courses online through my First Nation in Abanaki. And so I've been really fortunate to be able to, even at my age, now I'm 50, to keep learning my language because it still continues.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, you've also spent some time teaching Indigenous law. Why is that something you felt strongly to take on?
Well, when I started off my career, to be honest, I thought I was Indigenous, I was going to work in Aboriginal law. That was my calling. I have to tell you, I didn't get the dream jobs that I applied for. And I thought that one way of continuing to contribute to Aboriginal law was to teach it. So I taught 2 sessions in the French Common Law program, and I really enjoyed those 2 years of teaching.
Yeah, sometimes our paths don't go where we thought they would go, but you know, there's more to talk about here on Face to Face with Justice Michelle Obonsawin when we come back.
And this is the eagle feather that was gifted to me by an elder, and I was sworn in on this feather, and I named her Jacqueline after my grandmother. I've received other feathers throughout the years, but this here was another gift that I received when I was sworn in from the Atikamek, and it's a whole wing. So this is quite an honor to receive a whole wing.
Welcome back. It's been an enjoyable conversation with Justice Obonsawin. You know, we've talked about your career and the fact you're an inspiration for many. Let's switch gears a bit. Who inspired you and what lessons did you take from them?
My first mentor in life really was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. She was a woman who was born just before the Great Depression. She was a woman who really believed in higher education. She wasn't able to pursue post-secondary studies, and she really encouraged me to pursue my dream. So she worked her whole career, and for me, she was an inspiration. I was fortunate she was in my life until just a couple of years ago, and she really had a big impact in my life. And throughout my career, I've been really fortunate because one of my greatest inspirations also is the Honorable Murray Sinclair, who just passed away recently. He was a great mentor to me, but I've been fortunate throughout all my life, my career. I've had a series of different mentors that have really had an impact, and I am where I am here today because of them.
Yes, definitely. And you mentioned the late Murray Sinclair. So let's talk truth and reconciliation here. What's that road been like from your eyes within the justice system?
Well, it's been, of course, a bumpy road. I think that for the TRCs, the recommendations, the 94 calls to action, it's really put the issue on the forefront, the impact of residential schools, colonialism. It set a path forward that not just the government, but different provincial institutions, territorial, education, family, health services, all these institutions, there's a great path forward through those 94 calls to action. And once we have those in place, I think that the road to reconciliation is going to be much brighter.
Is there any advice to others who may be interested in a journey in the judicial system that you want to offer?
I recommend finding mentors, because for me that was really the key to my success. If there's someone who inspires you, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to that person, because you never know, that person might actually respond to you. And if you're able to meet with people that inspire you, I think that you benefit from that. It helps guide your way forward. And for me, and if you have a dream, pursue it. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. I had a guidance counselor in high school told me that I'd never be a lawyer. And I said, you know what, watch me. And I pursued my dream, and I really encourage those that if you have naysayers, don't listen to them. Just go ahead, do it. You can, anyone can, just put your mind to it.
Yeah, that sounds like some great advice. You mentioned to reach out to people. I'm guessing people have reached out to you and asked you for your help?
Yes, I've been a mentor throughout the years through my legal career as a lawyer, but also as a judge in Superior Court, and I continue to do mentorship with certain lawyers, even here in my position at the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and one final thing, I hear that you have some good news. There was a school named after you.
Yes, L'École Secondaire Michel Aubansoin in Toronto. I have to say, when I was first approached by the school board, they asked me if they could put my name forward. And I remember telling my family, I couldn't believe it. I said, can you believe they want to possibly put my name on a school? Which was a huge surprise to me, because normally that's for someone who is deceased in my mind. And then afterwards, a couple of months afterwards, I received the news that they had chosen my name, and the school officially opened in September of 2023. And it's a really proud moment for especially my father, because when he was young, they were called the Little Savages of Sunnybray, a lot of discrimination. His name, it was difficult to pronounce. People didn't know how to do so. And for him to see his name on a high school last year was a very, very proud moment for him, but also for me and my relatives.
Looks like our time together has come to an end. It's been great, Justice. Thanks for your time. If this episode caught your attention, or to hear from other past guests, check out our website, aptnnews.ca, or our YouTube page. All episodes are also available as podcasts. Thanks for being here for Face to Face.